My son John was tall and slim, he had a leg for every limb. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and today I am going to talk about something slightly different and potentially controversial, but I think very exciting, which is the idea of music and books. Now I know listening to music while you read is a very divisive topic in the book lover community. Some people absolutely love listening to music while they read and they can't read without it. Other people can't stand having any distractions while they read. Other people could take it or leave it. However you feel though, I have come up with several books recently where music plays a big role in them, and knowing what that music sounds like really deepens the reading experience. But I have come up with a few books recently where having a certain playlist or certain albums handy really helps enhance the reading experience. So here I have my books and music pairing menu. So the first book that really inspired this video was a book that I recently finished, She Rises by Kate Worsley. This is a novel that takes place in the 1740s about a young girl who is sent from a dairy farm to become a lady's maid to a captain's daughter in the port of Harwich. Not only does she fall in love with the lifestyle of the seaport town, but she also begins to fall for her mistress. At the same time, we follow the fate of a young boy who has been press-ganged into the Royal Navy and all of the horrors that he suffers while on board the ship. And we know these two plot lines must interconnect somehow, but we're never sure where, and let me tell you, I did not foresee how they were going to connect at all. The plot twist was fantastic. As I was reading, however, towards the end, one of the characters begins singing the song My Son John, which I love. It's incredibly dark. Maybe I shouldn't love it, but I tend to love dark songs, especially songs in minor keys. I don't know what it is, I just do. And so that moment really sucked me in the gut and went, oh my god, this is amazing. But then I realized so few people know that song. I wonder if that moment would have the same impact for them. Probably not. The next book that goes along with these same musical pairings is the Bloody Jack series by L.A. Meyer, which is a young adult series about a young girl, Mary, who disguises herself as a boy, Jackie, to get a job as a cabin boy on a naval ship. And 13 books later, we're still following her, much grown up now, and all of her wild adventures on the many, many seas and on many continents. One of the things I loved about these books is that Jackie is incredibly musical, and she often finds a way to create entertainment wherever she is, and indeed to earn herself some money by performing in taverns or on ships. And all of the songs that she sings are seagoing songs or Scottish and Irish folk songs that I knew. I had grown up with a lot of Scottish and Irish folk music. So I was thrilled as a teenager to find someone else who also knew all these songs. But I realized a lot of people probably didn't. And if you don't know the tune, if you can't picture how Jackie would be singing them and how she would be acting them, because Jackie is nothing if not a wonderful actress, those moments probably don't have the same impact. So if you read either the Bloody Jack series or She Rises, I would recommend listening to the album The Boathouse by Gaelic Storm. Gaelic Storm is a wonderful Irish band. I would recommend listening to all of their music regardless. They are incredibly funny, but they also have wonderful, wonderful, serious traditional tunes on their albums as well. And The Boathouse is particularly special as it's not available for streaming and it's not available on iTunes. I'm not even sure if it's available on their website. I will put a link down below if it is. I will do that. I will research that later. But The Boathouse is an incredibly special project to them, where they spent a week in a friend's boathouse and recorded all of their favorite seagoing songs. And that friend has now passed away, which makes it even more special to them. And I got the opportunity to see them live last summer, where they said, this album travels with us on the road, we sell it on the road, it will probably die with us out on the road, which meant I had to buy it and preserve that piece of their history. It is a wonderful, wonderful album. Many lively songs, many dark songs, including the song My Son John. So if you're able to give this a listen, definitely do. If not, if you come across a song in either of these books, if you decide to give them a try, look up that song on YouTube, on any streaming service. Give yourself an idea of what it would sound like, and then read that scene again. Let me know if you feel a difference. The next book that I naturally thought of in terms of books and musical pairings is The Barefoot Queen, or La Reina Descalza, by Ildefonso Falcones. This is an amazing book, which is actually translated, and I did not realize that it was translated until after I had read it. It was translated by Mara Faye Letham. This is the story of Caridad, who is a slave from Cuba, I believe, somewhere in the islands, whose master sets her free upon his death. And so all of these slaves are shipped back to Spain to begin their life as free men and women. But once she arrives in Spain, Caridad has no idea what to do with herself. She has no job opportunities, she has no money, she has no friends, no relations, nowhere to go, until she falls in with an older gypsy man, and they form a relationship. And then she falls in with his community, his family, his children, his grandchildren, their neighbors, all in Seville in the 1740s. And then we follow their lives as King Carlos III declares that all gypsies are outlaws, and how that affects their community. It is a wonderful multi-generational epic, beautifully written, and flamenco music naturally plays a huge part in it, as that was one of the mainstays of the gypsy community. So to understand what that flamenco would have sounded like, or might have sounded like, I would recommend that you listen to two albums in particular. The first is the soundtrack to the film Bengo, which is a film from, I believe, the late 1990s, early 2000s, told mainly through flamenco music and flamenco dance, such that I don't really remember a lot of the plot, I just remember the music. I particularly love the songs Arrincónamela by Grito de Guerras and La Calle del Aire by La Caíta. I would also recommend listening to the album Mi Mejor Poema by Raúl Medina, which is an album that my flamenco dance instructor used when we were in Spain. That was what she had us practice to. So if you really get that feel of the rhythms, and flamenco is such a strange combination of joy, defiance, and pain, all wrapped up into one sound. I don't think you really can understand that until you hear it. And then understanding how that affects the characters in The Barefoot Queen becomes even more powerful. The next book and musical pairing that I recommend to you is very specific, and that is for Bel Canto by Anne Patchett. This is a fantastic book for any opera lover, and I think it's gotten mixed reviews purely because unless you understand the operas that are being referenced and the power that they have, the book isn't going to make as big of an emotional impact on you. So what I have done is gone through this book and marked all of the operas, especially if there are any particular songs or moments that are referenced, and I have created a playlist for those. So I have included the line and the chapter number, in case you have a different edition, and then listed what piece is being referenced from which opera, and a clip that I have been able to find down below. For those of you who haven't read it, Bel Canto is about a Japanese businessman who is invited to a great party in his honor at the home of a powerful politician in South America. And in Mr. Hosokawa's honor, they have invited the legendary soprano Roxanne Koss to sing for him. However, during this evening, the villa is taken over and held hostage by a rebel guerrilla group, and it follows the lives of both the soldiers in the hostage group and the hostages themselves, and how living together throughout this period slowly brings about changes in all of them, how it affects them emotionally, psychologically, and the part that music plays throughout that time. I absolutely adored it, at least, and hopefully with the help of my playlist, you might get something more from it as well. My next book and music pairing is a soundtrack, but I haven't gone for an obvious soundtrack like listening to the Lord of the Rings soundtracks while you read the books. This book is the Jeeves and Wooster series by P.G. Wodehouse, which is about, if you're not familiar, the young aristocratic gentleman Bertie Wooster in London in the 1920s, who is full of bonhomie and full of joie de vivre, but keeps getting himself into the most horrible situations. And it's up to his butler, Jeeves, who is incredibly calm and incredibly intelligent, to get him out of all of those situations. So to go along with this lovely series, I would recommend listening to the soundtrack The World of Jeeves and Wooster. This is a soundtrack made to go along with the television series made in the early 1990s, starring Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie. The soundtrack features a lot of the music from the television series, and that is referenced in the books, and indeed has some spoken moments between Jeeves and Wooster. One thing that I love about these books is that Bertie Wooster speaks with such a distinctive rhythm, but it really takes a moment to get your eye and your ear accustomed to that rhythm to really understand why it's funny. So my feeling is if you can hear these characters speaking and singing, you will get so much more out of these books when you then go back and read them. Next, a very popular film among English majors is Midnight in Paris, and I can't say I blame them. I love this film as well, and its soundtrack is wonderful. Lovely Parisian jazz and 1920s tunes. It is wonderful. I truly love that soundtrack. And a lot of people love to read the works of authors who are featured in that film, who were living in Paris in the 1920s. So you can certainly listen to the Midnight in Paris soundtrack while reading F. Scott Fitzgerald or Ernest Hemingway or Gertrude Stein. But I would also suggest that you listen to it while reading the works of Colette, who is not featured in that film, but who still would have been living in Paris in the 1920s and writing profusely. Colette actually got to live through the Belle Époque, which if you know the film, you'll know why that is significant, through into the 1920s, through World War II. She was an incredible writer and an incredible woman. She fought for the right for her own name to be on her works in the first place rather than that of her husband. She was as openly bisexual as one could be at the time, and just lived her own life on her own terms long before it was fashionable or even possible for many women to do so. I have 3 of her works here. I have first the complete Claudine, which is 4 separate novels, which were her earliest works. They are Claudine at School, Claudine in Paris, Claudine Married, and Claudine and Annie. I also have a bind-up of 3 of her short stories, Gigi, Julie de Carnelin, and Chance Acquaintances, and her short story, Chérie. I would recommend reading all of these. I cannot summarize what all of them are about in this video, but if you are at all intrigued, or if you are at all intrigued by the film Colette, starring Keira Knightley, then I would highly recommend that you check out that film first, then come to her works, and perhaps read them with that lovely Midnight in Paris soundtrack. And lastly, a book that does not directly deal with music, but it does provide a lovely soundtrack and really helps immerse you in the culture that you are reading about. And that is Kim Ji-young, born 1982, by Cho Nam-ju, which is translated from the Korean by Jamie Chang. This is a book about the status of women in modern day South Korea and all of the problems that they still face. And this book was instrumental in changing the way South Korean society functioned because it pointed out all of those issues in such an impactful way. Now, again, while music does not play a direct influence in this book, I would still recommend listening to some K-pop before, during, or after you read this book. I would recommend making your own playlist, poke around in the K-pop world, see what you like. There are many, many bands for you to choose from. I personally would recommend anything from BTS, EXO, and NCT. They are my particular favorites. But you are welcome to poke around and find any other bands that you may like as well. I found that listening to current Korean music as well as listening to that much Korean really helped me feel immersed in South Korean society, which then made this book extra impactful. So there you have it. Those are the books that I would recommend paired with particular kinds of music. Of course, I avoided soundtracks of films or musical versions of books, and there are many books that were turned into operas as well, but I will feature a separate video on those. And as soundtracks are easily found, I steered away from those. I wanted to highlight these more unusual musical pairings for your perusal and delight. If you would make any other suggestions to add to this list, please let me know in the comments down below. If you are intrigued by any of these books, let me know. As always, I am grateful for all of your comments and your recommendations. They really make me so happy. And until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading and listening. Bye everyone.